Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for January 8th, 2025. Very small, very small week. So it's supposed to be 8 books originally. 3 of them got moved to next week. So now next week's huge. I think there's like 15 titles next week. Only 5 this week. So we're going to talk about them all. Obviously, if there's only 5 books, then everything makes the top 5. But that being said, um, I I mean, I don't think all of these would have made my top 5. I think maybe four of them no, 3 of them for sure would have made. No, I should take that back. 2 of them. Maybe I keep switching. I'm trying to think of what got moved. Yeah, so maybe 3 of these and 2 of the ones that got moved. I'm not really sure, but yeah. I mean, again, with only 8, most of them were going to make my top 5 anyway. But yeah, really great week of books that we're going to talk about in just a second. But before we do that, I'm sure you guys have all seen in the news about the raging wildfires in Southern California. I have a lot of friends and family there. I'm from California originally, so not that it does any good to offer, thoughts and prayers or what have you, but, if you can make donations to the Red Cross or, awareness, it's not the time for, name calling, divisiveness, pointing fingers, blaming this or that. It's climate. They haven't any rain in hundreds of days. They're under drought conditions. It makes things dry. And it happens, pointing fingers and blaming woke or blaming, Republicans because they are climate denier, whatever. We need to come together and just support those that have lost everything. A lot of the people didn't even have homeowners insurance anymore because insurance companies won't insure in those areas because of the danger of wildfire. So a lot of the people aren't even going to be able to rebuild. So it's just a terrible situation. And yeah, obviously our hearts go out to those that are in that terrible situation. So
Sure.
we don't normally, talk about that kind of stuff on the show, but man, like I know people who've lost their homes, and it's just tragic. And again, my heart goes out. I mean, California holds a special place in my heart. I grew up there. I was born there. I lived there for 41 years of my life, so it'll always be home for me. So anyway, Rocky, what did you think about the week of small week here of DC books?
I actually I liked I enjoyed all 5. 4 in particular I liked. It wouldn't have surprised me if I can't remember the DC did. There's been some delays and they moved some books. I can't remember all the titles that were originally in slotted for this week. Suffice to say that I actually quite enjoyed all of these. I quite enjoyed 3 for sure out of 5 I really liked, and yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm going to quite enjoy talking about all of these with you.
Yeah, the books that got moved, if everybody's curious. So, Action Comics, which is written by John Ridley, coming off the Mark Waid run, got moved. Black Lightning got moved, and the Green Lantern Fractured Spectrum special. I don't know why I always have such a hard time saying that. Fractured Spectrum. Um, so those are the ones that got moved, and it's so funny too because I had an interview set up with Jeremy Adams to talk about See, look, why can't I say it? The Fractured Spectrum special. I'm still dropping that this week per DC's wishes. I probably would have dropped if it was coming out this week. I would have dropped it on Tuesday or late Monday. But being that it got pushed, they're like, can you drop it on Wednesday or Thursday? So it'll go out tomorrow. So look for that and look for Fractured Spectrum next week. I did get a chance to talk to Scott Snyder. I mean, he was just on the show for 12 Days of the Comic Source, but we didn't talk much about Absolute Batman, just a little bit right at the end, because I knew I was going to get a chance to talk to him about Absolute Batman #4 specifically, which is basically Absolute Batman Year One. It explains, and we'll get into it when we talk about the issue, but it explains kind of the formative years and motivations for Bruce and why he does what he does and what have you. But I did get a chance to chat with Scott, and there is an Absolute Batman #4 spotlight with Scott that's on the YouTube channel. Just do a search on Comic Source for YouTube or go to your favorite podcasting platform or app. Do a search for the Comic Source and you can find the episode there. So all that being said, let's go ahead and dive in. First book we're going to talk about. Oh man, it's a banger right out of the gate. Aquaman #1 from favorite of Rocky and mine, friend of the show, Jeremy Adams handling the writing. The art is by John Timms. Rex Locus is on the colors, and Dave Sharp handles the letters. So um, we haven't even had a chance. Like, I'm surprised that we didn't talk about this ahead of time. Rocky, I'm gonna let you go
Yeah.
first. Give us your thoughts on this first issue of Aquaman from Jeremy.
Well, I got to tell you, I never. Uh, I figured this is a test. I thought this was a big test for Jeff Johns, quite frankly, when Jeff Johns took on Aquaman, and Jeff Johns did a good job with the title. But I got to be honest, I enjoyed Kelly Sue DeConnick's run on the title as well. I guess maybe maybe I'm always been an Aquaman fan, and but yet he always seems to be sort of he always seems to get in there sort of like the shit end of the stick. But you know, I think trying to make Aquaman interesting is a challenge for many writers, and few can really pull it off in a way that interests me. And but having said that, Jeremy Adams, this was a test for him, in my opinion, because I think it's common. I think for people to perceive maybe there's more interesting stories if you're writing the Flash, more potential with the Flash, especially with Green Lantern. And so, how can Jeremy Adams make Aquaman, the guy that talks to fishes, interesting? Well, he does something very, very wise, and that is he returns Aquaman to his roots. You know, gone is the notion that that Atlantis is a democracy. It's a monarchy, and it should be. Gone is the notion that I mean, Aquaman is back to being the king of Atlantis. I can't quite remember. Uh, I will happily stand corrected by those watching, and they can leave comments. But I, I think that Jeremy Adams took certain liberties here. I don't remember Aquaman. I remember Atlantis. I didn't remember Atlantis being a monarchy in the last iteration of writings. I thought Mira was the queen, and I thought, but maybe all that was. I see. Here's the thing: I don't even remember the last all that a lot about the last Aquaman story. I remember a Black Manta series that I didn't particularly enjoy. I remember it was just kind of everything was a mess. But what Jeremy Adams does right here is that he introduces right off the bat. He establishes the way things are right off the bat, and and he gives us, he basically gives us a synopsis right away. We know that Aquaman. We get a brief synopsis of his origin. Right on the first page, we hop skip and we get right into the matter where Aquaman is doing his heroic job. Rescuing He's rescuing people. A plane is crashing into the ocean. He's got Mira's powers, which follow from absolute power. Very easy to understand. It's very easy. It's a John Tim's art's just fantastic. Color work by Rex Locus just excellent, and we get sort of an epic moment of an aircraft carrier crashing into the ocean. Aquaman using his newfound powers. He needs to be trained a little bit by Mira because he doesn't know how to quite control the sort of like the water kinetic powers or however you want to describe it, and it works. And he ends up returning to Atlantis. You can tell he's maybe a little bit overwhelmed by being a king. He's not overwhelmed, but he doesn't necessarily, it's clear that he's got the duties of a king. And it actually feels a little bit more manly. Dare I feel it's not political. It's not, but I kind of like it. It's going back to the traditional view of Aquaman that I really like. And I'm kind of, that's what, that an interpretation of Aquaman that I particularly like. And Jeremy Adams gets it. He goes back to the core essence of the character. He's the king of Atlantis. Period. Mira's his love interest. He's got a daughter, and I love that. And I particularly love how there's even Jeremy Adams once again showing his love for continuity, showing the fact that Jeremy Adams, guess what he did? Surprise, surprise. He does something so many writers don't bother to do. He's actually read some Aquaman comic books in his life. We even get an editorial reference to Drowned Earth. Oh my God. Good. I mean, any potential DC writers out there, take notes. And please remember that get familiar with the character before you write a story. Jeremy Adams gets it. He gets the assignment. He always seems to. That's why he's getting the jobs he's getting at DC because he's good at it. And I like the fact that the Drowned Earth reference is to a creature that Aquaman takes on. This creature seems to be the byproduct of these mysterious orbs, or a mysterious orb that he finds. He returns to Atlantis to find Atlantis completely gone. and then he interacts with the Justice League. So not only do we get firmly established who Aquaman is. He's the king of Atlantis. He's got a wife. He's got a daughter. His place in the universe. His place in the world. Followed from absolute powers. Got new powers. He's been heroic. We got an epic scene. We got an interaction with the Justice League. He's a key member of the Justice League. That shows. He interacts with Batman and Wonder Woman. And at the end of the day, in investigating the missing Atlantis, he comes across a massive portal device in the shape of an Omega symbol, which we all know to be a symbol of Darkseid. Or in depending on how you want to view it, it is also a symbol that you see on Metron, but the Omega symbol is often Darkseid. So right away you wonder, is this related to Darkseid? Is this related to Apocalypse? Is this related to the Fallout from DC All-In Special? I don't know, but it's Jeremy Adams, and in Adams I trust. And so I love this. And the final page, it says, Aquaman is back, baby. And I'm thinking, you bet your ass he is. And I mean, this was a joy to read. And it's Aquaman, and I enjoyed an Aquaman comic again. Well, wonders never cease. What a great way to start off the second week of 2025. What about your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this was not what I expected. I mean, obviously we had Jeremy on to kick off 12 Days of the Comic Source. We were talking about this. We're talking about more of a cosmic feel for Aquaman. He teased, maybe him going off planet or what have you. I didn't expect him to go to Apocalypse of all places. And I'm not saying that's where he goes. Maybe he goes to the absolute universe. The point is, we don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. I mean, Aquaman died, in the Drowned Earth story, and then that started the Kelly Sue DeConnick storyline where he had amnesia, and then he comes back and he gets killed again in the Death of the Justice League, except he wasn't really killed. He was in a pocket universe, and yeah, all that. And you're right. In the meantime, it was, for lack of a better term, maybe we'll call Mira like prime minister, because yeah, it was a democracy. There were, some writers that thought that made more sense in today's kind of societal outlook or what have you. I kind of lean in the way you do. It's like, yeah, Atlantis is not the surface world. They don't have the same, values or whatever. I don't think the subjects are being exploited or what have you. I don't think it needs to be a democracy. It can be a monarchy as long as the king or the queen or whomever is ruling is doing it fairly and justly, and Arthur Curry is certainly going to do that. So I don't know when it switched back, maybe because of the things that happen in Absolute Power, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because we see from the events of this issue with this Pearl, and I'm wondering what the connection this Pearl may have to the Pearl that we saw in the Miss Martian and Jackson Hyde story that was in, I think it was in a Batman Brave and the Bold issue. But Atlantis is missing. It's gone. And this Pearl is basically the only link that Aquaman has to go find Atlantis. It's not just his missing kingdom and his subjects. It's Mira and it's Andy as well, his young daughter. So, he's very motivated to go and find it. And with the help of Zatanna and Batman, they locate the similar vibration. They go out there. The Pearl kind of activates, if you will, and that's where we see this Omega symbol appear. So again, I have to wonder, like, did Atlantis get pulled into the Absolute Universe? Did it get pulled to the Apocalypse here? Like, what the hell is going on? I have no idea, but I'm very intrigued. This already feels like a big epic story, and I don't know why I wasn't expecting that, because it's Jeremy, and Jeremy tells big epic stories. He just has fantastic ideas. So, we'll see how that all plays out. But the other part of this, where it kind of balances out with the epicness and scope of the story that's sort of being, promised here, the potential of that, it's balanced out by some more personality for Aquaman than we've had before. And Jeremy said that again, to, go back and reference when I chatted with him. He talked about giving Arthur more of a personality than just stoic guy, because that's typically been the personality that he's had. He's just kind of the stoic guy that doesn't talk much and kind of, sits in the background. Or if you go back to the Peter David era in the 90s, and it was like angry bearded guy. But we don't really, I mean, for a character that's been around for decades and decades, like he hasn't been fleshed out in a way that some of the other long-standing characters have. And that way, he's sort of like Martian Manhunter a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see what comes of that. The John Timms art is absolutely fantastic. Maybe the best art I've seen from him. We've at times been, critical, or at least I have, of his art being overly complicated or too busy. Like I think back to not necessarily his Harley Quinn work, which is where I first saw him working with Jimmy and Amanda, because you kind of expect those pages to be busy with a lot of stuff going on and zany, because that's just the aesthetic of that Harley Quinn era. But I remember him doing the Son of Superman Future State issues, and those were just so chaotic. It was almost hard to tell what was going on. We don't get that here. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's underwater, which presents its own illustrating challenges. But I thought he did a fantastic job. Like I said, probably the best art I've seen from him. The colors are fantastic as well. Um, I did notice, Rocky, you put a little picture of Booster Gold on our background here. If you're watching on YouTube, everybody.
Yeah,
So yeah, a little nod to perhaps we're going to the Absolute Universe. I guess we'll have
we
to
might.
see. I can't really think. I mean, I guarantee that Booster and Aquaman have been in the same issues before. I think they were even members of the Justice League together at one point, but I can't really remember any specific interactions. So it is going to be interesting if the first quote unquote normal person, that the normal hero that Booster sees is Aquaman. He probably make some joke about, really, I'm trapped here and this is who they send. Um, and for that matter, will we see the absolute version of Arthur Curry, or is there an absolute version of Arthur Curry? So yeah, this is off to a fantastic start. Really dug it. Again, I mean, I try not to have expectations when it comes to Jeremy's books, because he always exceeds them, but I sort of can't help it. I was excited for this, and yeah, like I said, it exceeded those expectations. So,
Yeah.
all right. Excuse me. Up next, we have Batman Dark Patterns, issue number 2. This is from writer Dan Waters. Hayden Sherman is the artist. Triona Farrell on colors. Frank Vedovic on letters. Um, let's see. Let me find my notes here. Get to the right week. Yeah. So I love the classic feel. Um, because it is a detective story, and that very much feels sort of late 70s, early 80s Batman. But there's also this weirdness factor, right? And Dan Waters himself will say, yeah, a lot of the stuff he writes tends to be weird, and you get a little bit of that as well with this. I can't remember what the Wound Man,
The
with the
Wounded
way he
Man.
has all the,
Wounded,
yeah,
right?
you
Yeah.
know, apparently was a doctor at some point or has medical training or what have you, and you know has all these nails in him or what have you, and yeah, it's super weird, and so you sort of expect that from a Dan Waters book, and that's certainly what we got. Um, the other thing that really comes across, we know this is early in Batman's career, and this is a less experienced Batman, and Waters does a great job of getting that across as well. And then if you want to talk about the perfect artist to capture sort of a classic, inexperienced Batman, classic in terms of the detective feel, trying to solve a crime, trying to solve a mystery, maybe not going as blunt force, as not trying to brute force the problem as much as he would nowadays. I mean, I feel like modern Batman, instead of thinking his way out of problems a lot of times, he's just brute forcing. And I prefer more cerebral Batman, and that's what we get here. So if you want to have that, but then you want to have the weirdness that I was talking about that Dan Waters brings in, well, who's the right artist to do something like that? Hayden Sherman, right? We might be a little bit critical, or I'll just speak for myself. I might be have my doubts about whether or not his style of art or his aesthetic that he's bringing to Absolute Wonder Woman is really working for what that type of story wants to be. But in this case, he's absolutely perfect. I literally can't think of another artist I would want on this book or who would do a better job of capturing that balance of a young, inexperienced Batman who's, makes sense that he wouldn't try to brute force it. He's going to try to solve the mystery. He's going to use his brains because he hasn't been Batman as long or for very long, and so he may not have as much confidence in his physical skills. But he knows he's brilliant. He's done all this training and all this studying to kind of solve mysteries and gather up clues and what have you, and bring in that weird feel. I mean, Hayden Sherman is just perfect. The art is so amazing. I thought the pacing was really good, and that can be something that can be a little tough. So credit both visual pacing from Hayden and the narrative pacing from Dan Waters. Because when you have Batman limited series, and as far as I know, this is the first time that Dan is getting to write Batman. I mean, he wrote him in wrote some detective backups, but Batman wasn't in too many of those specifically. It was more either Jim Gordon or Harley Quinn or um, the Ten Eyed Man or what have you. But I mean, he's probably written them here or there, one shot anthology, what have you. But this is the first time he's getting a chance to really do, kind of a longer form series. I think this is 10 or 12 issues. Um, and so there's the danger of the writer, and I've seen other writers do this, where they go, well, this might be the only chance I ever get to write Batman. And Batman's kind of a bucket list character to write if you're a comic book writer, for a lot of comic book writers. So there's a tendency to overstuff the story because it's like, man, if this is the only Batman story I get to write, and that's why Joker gets used so much, right? This is the only Batman story I get to write. I got to tell my Joker story. And they just try to stuff everything in there, and you end up with like 10 pounds of story in a 5-pound bag. Dan is not, he didn't fall into that trap, at least not so far. It's paced very well, the right amount of story per issue. The visuals are amazing. The actual panel layouts on the pages are interesting. I mean, Hayden does a good job of that in Absolute Wonder Woman. It's probably the strength of what he's doing over there. But it really works here with what he's doing with Batman Dark Matter. Like, this is just a really great book. Like, when it got announced and I read what it was like, oh, we're going to get back to his detective roots. It's really going to be a mystery, and Hayden's drawing it and Dan's writing it. I was pretty excited. I thought it would work, and to the credit of both of these guys, it's working really, really well. So, yeah, I really dug this issue. What'd you think about it, Rocky?
I loved it, and I made the comment when we reviewed the opening issue of Batman Dark Patterns that I didn't this Hayden Sherman art is in me. It's completely different than his Wonder Woman in my view. It feels like a completely different comic visually to me, and I want to give a shout out to Triana. One of the things that the colorist Triona Farrell, I want to give her high compliments because when these pages, when I look at the Wounded Man here, the Wound Man, without the coloring, I mean, he is one of the most visually stunning new villains I have ever seen visually. And the color work really draws all the nails that are literally on multiple nails on his body, his arms, his shoulders, and his legs. It doesn't work without the coloring. The color work is just fantastic, and how every single spike and I mean, the colors. It's not just the art; it's the color work that enhances so well Hayden Sherman's art here. It's just fantastic. And you mentioned the layouts. The layouts are really good. Now, many people have found the layouts in his Wonder Woman, in Absolute Wonder Woman, to be pretty good as well. I think it's because, in fairness, uh, I don't I think Hayden Sherman having to draw like ridiculous looking crab like monsters in Absolute Wonder Woman, he does a good job at that. But because I got no reference point. I just don't appreciate it as much because he's drawing more human grotesque characters. Maybe in Batman Dark Patterns, I can appreciate his art more, and I appreciate the detail and his line work so much better, and his layouts. I just appreciate him as an artist so much more reading Batman Dark Patterns than I do with his Absolute Wonder Woman work. But hey, look, there's a lot of people that love his work on Absolute Wonder Woman, and it's certainly growing on me in Absolute Wonder Woman. So kudos to Hayden Sherman. He's doing a fantastic job. Dan Waters, on the story itself, I really enjoyed the story. I love the fact that Batman is so concerned about not wanting to kill the Wounded Man, not wanting to touch him, because any type of infliction of harm of even touching the Wounded Man anywhere, he can die. The connection to Ace Chemicals, of course, when you think of Ace Chemicals, we know that it's grounded in the origin of the Joker, but he's introduced another character, Christopher Sionis, who's involved with Ace Chemicals, and they created a chemical that was injected into the wounded man to make him what he is. And how is this all tied up with the larger story itself, and this pathologist that Batman doesn't like, that he thinks is crazy, this Dr. Sarakis or whatever, who's been charged with sort of caring for the wounded man because the hospital, Gotham Hospital's on fire. Dan Waters is weaving multiple little plots and subplots going on here in a very clever way, and it works. It's an easy read, it's a fun read, and it's visually stunning. And again, this is another one where this is absolutely a candidate for pick of the week for me. Out of the 5 that we have, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So definitely pick it up if you're heading out this week and on the fence. Yeah, definitely worth reading. All right, up next, Batman and Robin 17, Memento Part 4 from writer Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Javi Fernandez on art with an assist from Carmine Di Giandomenico on the flashbacks, pages 1 through 3, and then 16. Marcelo Maiello on colors, Steve Wands on letters. We're getting some more of that father-son dynamic that Phillip gave us last issue. I thought the art was really moody. And I loved getting the flashbacks into Bruce's past. Feels a little bit like The Night, the story that I think it was Tom Taylor that wrote that. Zdarsky referenced it as well. And now we're getting a little bit more of that. So we had one that Zdarsky wrote that was also Batman training, and then we had The Night, which was Tom Taylor, which I think Zdarsky is more the one that I'm thinking about with more of his training. The one that Tom Taylor wrote was more about him connecting back with some of the people he met when he was training, Henri Ducar and what have you. So I like that in sort of the modern present where we are with Batman, some of the things that he learned, some of the people that he interacted with are being brought into that story. That Phillip Kennedy Johnson is crafting. And then again, the father-son dynamic is it feels so real. This feels like a more mature Damian as opposed to the bratty kid that he's been, for so long when he was first introduced. I think DC is doing a really good job of showing that there are growing pains. He doesn't have all the answers like he thought he did when he was younger. And speaking from experience, I certainly can relate to that. Being a teenager, you think you know everything and you have all the answers, and the older you get, the more you realize you know less and less, and you have fewer and fewer answers about the world or what's the right thing to do, complicated situations and that sort of thing. So just a fantastic job by Phillip to illustrate that with Damian, despite all his physical skills and training. He realizes that maybe more than ever that he can make mistakes. This young girl that he was sort of rude to at the party got hurt, and he's very concerned that he wasn't able to protect her and what have you. So it's almost like, in a way, he's getting a perspective of how Bruce felt when he first showed up, or how Bruce feels about all of the Bat family overall. He feels so protective as a father. But at the same time, he needs Damian, and that's an interesting dynamic as well. It's not every version of Batman that's actively saying, "Hey, I need you with me on patrol. I need you out here with me." I mean, there's so many versions of Batman, so many Batman stories where he just wants to do it all on his own, or thinks he needs to do it all on his own, to his detriment sometimes, and to the consternation and disappointment of other superheroes that want to help him. Hey, you don't have to do it all alone. It's okay to let people in. It's okay to trust. We know there's a aspect of Batman. There's an aspect of Bruce's personality where he is a loner. He grew up in a lot of ways very alone after his parents died, and he was certainly on his own when he was out there traveling the world training. He wasn't completely alone because he was with people, but he couldn't be himself. He wasn't, he would go in there with a fake identity, and he would obscure his motivations. He wasn't telling people, "Hey, I'm training to fight crime because my parents were killed by a criminal." No, he used fake names and gave false motivations for why he was doing what he was doing. So he was very isolated, even though he was out there amongst people. And so you can see why he wants to make sure Damian doesn't follow that same path. Again, there's uh, a real sense of verisimilitude, of truthfulness, of accuracy when you see the way that Bruce is trying to be a father to Damian. But also there's a little bit of, I don't want to say selfishness, but you almost think, well, what if Damien comes to you and says, I don't want to beat people up anymore. I don't want to be, Robin anymore or what have you. I want to follow in my grandfather's footsteps and be a healer. And I can't reconcile that. I can't go and take a Hippocratic oath that says do no harm if I'm out there beating the shit out of people, Like, what does that look like? Does Bruce accept that? You would think that he'd want his son to be happy. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting kind of thought problem, because what it reminds me of is one of my favorite series of all time. I've mentioned it before on the podcast, the Vigilante series from Marv Wolfman, where Adrian Chase goes through something similar, right? Where he's out there and he's technically breaking the law. He's bringing criminals to justice that have escaped justice through technicalities in the court of law, or mistakes or tainted evidence or whatever it might be. And as long as he's um, a district attorney, that's okay. But as soon as he becomes a judge, he realizes that he can't be judge, jury, and executioner, and he gives it up. And yeah, the story goes on from there. But that's kind of what I'm talking about here, and what's being teased by Phillip Kennedy Johnson with Damian, and it's fascinating. I've never been more interested in Damian Wayne, and I think I've said that before with this run by Phillip. I wasn't sure if he was the right choice for this title. But again, like somebody like Phillip's so talented. I've really enjoyed most of the things that he's done. Um, I can't think of anything I haven't enjoyed that he's done. It's just that I haven't read everything he's done. Um, but yeah, I should have known he would knock it out of the park, and he's doing that for sure. Also, again, the artwork's fantastic, both from Javier Fernandez, and the Dijon Domenico flashback pages are awesome as well. So anyway, what did you think of it, Rocky?
I thought Philip Kennedy Johnson did a fantastic job here. High compliments to him. When this comic started off, that first page, and there's this woman who, it looked to me that it was Lieutenant Lautrec, and it is. She's talking to a guy whose name is Jack. I was confused. But then I got to page two, and then I got to page two where she calls him out on his lies. That, he lied about being a cop son. She can see through his BS. And then through her seeing through his lies, we the reader can infer, it's Bruce Wayne. Now you could infer that from the fact that he looks like Bruce Wayne, but I mean he is called Jack. But just sort of like the way that it, it it both elevated Lieutenant Lautrec. It made her look intelligent. That she's a detective. She's pretty good at reading people. This took place in the past, so you could infer it was time when before he was Batman. He was. So we know that Bruce Wayne in the past had some connection to Memento, or was involved in some investigation involving the mystery. And then he says, when when she asks, why are you doing this? And he says, because someone has to. How that ties into Rob and Damien's comments later on in the issue, where Damien says the same thing when Lieutenant Lautrec asks essentially Damien the same thing, because she doesn't want to ride on on a motorbike with a kid, and she makes some comment about why is how can I expect some kid to take care of Batman? And he goes, because someone has to. Right away, you see the legacy, you see the generational connection, and you can see her drawing the connections and figuring out there must be. It reminded her of someone else she knew, the Jack in the past, and so it was just brilliantly done, and with dialogue that didn't come out and just say it. It's left up to the reader to infer and to think, that's she's making those connections. I thought it was just brilliant. And then you mentioned Damien's journey. I mean, this is Philip Kennedy Johnson is doing a really good job reminding readers without straight up telling us in so many words that Damien is. I mean, he's not like Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, as an adult, learned how to fight crime. As an adult, learned how to be Batman. I mean, his training may have started when he was a young teenager, but he really only started really directly fighting crime as an adult. So his hero's journey was demonstrably different than Damien's, who was raised an assassin. They have very different hero's journey, different arcs, so to speak. And Damian, arguably, you could even argue has been an anti-hero or a villain at times, if you really want to get nitpicky. But I like the fact that Damian is on this. Is he's trying to he's questioning his mission. He's questioning himself. He's on a different. The life path that his life might take might be very different than his father's, and yet there's that conflict there that Philip Kennedy Johnson does so well. That here's Batman, he's the adult, he's the father, and yet in many ways he's relying upon his own son. He needs Damian to be there for him, and he doesn't appreciate in this instance, that Damian is his own person. And in this case, Batman, you see the flaws of Batman here, and you see how sometimes the student, or maybe in this case the teacher, i.e. Batman, can learn something from his pupil, his son Damian, because there's a maturity in Damian that is, especially he's clearly looking for something, and he's doing some kind of soul searching because he cares about this young girl that he failed to protect in the opening issue of Johnson's arc here. Very well done. I'm interested in the story. I'm curious about Memento. But, again, what's great is I'm not only curious about the main plot, but really what interests me even more is the character work of Damian Wayne and his relationship vis-a-vis his dad, and just the continued improvement that DC has done, and starting with Williamson's Robin run, carrying through, evolving over the last few years with this run, just the improvement of and the evolution, the believable evolution of Damian Wayne's character, to the credit of the Batman mythos.
Yeah, I wasn't confused at all. Like I didn't have to infer that it was Bruce, because in the previous, like ever since Kennedy's Johnson's run has started, the flashbacks have been drawn by Carmine, and they've been colored with this kind of orange overtone. This investigation into Memento in Europe. So I guess I just took the visual cues of that. But you're right; it's not for somebody if they haven't read those previous issues or they didn't pick up on that. But yeah, the dialogue is fantastic, and
I
it
got to
goes to
admit,
show. I mean,
but it's short.
yeah, yeah, that's true too. But yeah, but I mean, you're right, and we have seen that not as much in the first issue, but the second issue, we saw Lautrec there, and it was clear that she was intellectually she's a match for Bruce. So it's not really surprising that she's putting the clues together and figuring out that he's Batman. What fallout there might be from that, I guess remains to be seen. I don't think that it'll advance to the point that she'll be a love interest for Batman. How long has it been since Bruce has had a legitimate love interest? Like, I'm trying to think back.
Well,
What's
you
her
mean
name?
other than Catwoman? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, like I said, a legitimate civilian. Who was the woman that he got
well,
framed
actually,
for?
just last week he got it on with Scarlet, the purple-haired
Again,
one.
that doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't.
What do you mean that doesn't
A
count?
hookup. Yeah, a random
You
hookup.
slept with her.
Like,
That counts.
yeah, wasn't it? It was the woman. Like the last one I remember was when he got. Remember when he got framed for murder? I mean, we're going back to the '90s here.
Yeah,
It was
that
like,
was Sasha Bordeaux.
yeah,
Sasha
that's right.
Bordeaux.
She was his bodyguard, and then
Yeah, she
she was.
became Omak with the one eye. Didn't
Yeah,
she
yeah.
cut her eye or whatever? Yeah,
She literally was guarding his body, and then he got framed for a murder as Bruce Wayne
yeah,
fugitive, whatever. Like that's the last time I remember him like trying to have a legitimate relationship with, and maybe that's why. Look how bad it went. So of course he doesn't want to try to date or whatever. But I kind of miss that, like you think back to those like 70s and 80s Batmans when I first started reading. He
yeah,
would go out on actual dates.
yeah.
It wasn't that he was trying to do the Christian Bale thing in Batman Begins, where he would, he was putting on a persona. Like he was actually going out on dates because he, wanted to have a personal life. Imagine that, Batman with a personal life. I can't imagine DC going, yeah, that's okay. We can pivot to that. Doesn't seem to be what readers want. So yeah, it's been forever. I don't think we'll get like what we got in the Detective Comics with him hooking up. That's about as close to the personal life as we'll get. But I only bring that up to say if this Detective Lautrec figures it out, I mean, they have history there. Could it turn romantic? I guess we'll see. Anyway, up next we have DC versus Vampires World War V issue number 6 from writer Matthew Rosenberg. Otto Schmidt on the art for the main story. Pierluigi Casolini handles the colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. And then we have part 1 of The Hunger, which is an Animal Man backup, written by Joey Esposito. Pasquale Colano on art. Pierluigi Casolino on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. If you're going, why does that name Joey Esposito sound familiar? The critically acclaimed Pedestrian over at, is it Vault, I think, that puts it out, that I've been meaning to get caught up on. Joey Esposito writes that. So anyway, lots doing here in this issue of DC versus Vampires. Give us your thoughts, Rocky.
Well, this was I think a lot happened in this issue. I thought it was shocking. Uh, I love the action. So much happened. We get uh, I finally to me the visually I finally was able to distinguish between Aquaman and Deathstroke. The 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 fate of we're in a vampire like landscape. Barbara Gordon is the vampire queen. She was almost killed by a vampiric Damien, but she survived. She's orchestrating the war against the final war between the vampires and the humans. She wants to wipe out the humans. But there's this golden child, or this child of prophecy, that is ultimately revealed to be the offspring of Big Barda or Scott Free, and then Darkseid has an interest in it. And so, just when things really heat up this issue, and it looks like it's the final war between the vampires and the human race, we end up Darkseid makes an appearance and isn't too happy to hear that Aquaman talks smart. Uh, this is a very arrogant and very dim and foolish Aquaman who lips off Darkseid, telling him Aquaman wrongly believes that that he killed the child, and Scott Free, who I don't believe are dead. And this issue ends with the forces of Apocalypse attempting to destroy the entire planet because the child of prophecy has been seemingly dead, and Darkseid's awfully pissed off. And there is we still have Flash still seems to be healing from the fact that his legs were basically cut off, and he was used for his energy to power the ongoing production of food to basically feed humans. And we got John Constantine, who even though he's dead, he's been the quintessence appeared to have revived John Constantine for reasons of which will have to be revealed in future issues. um, we got Metron makes an appearance, which I guess that individual was Metron, and Metron is there to reveal information. And of course, he's a new god. We have Darkseid making an appearance. Clearly, this is out of continuity and out of the multiverse itself, because we know, of course, there's only one Darkseid, and so. But the great thing about this being out of continuity, Rosenberg's just doing a good job here. He's having a lot of fun, and I love the fact that he's really playing with all these characters. He's having a lot of fun doing it. I love his portrayal of Supergirl. I love how she battles Wonder Woman. That the action sequences are really good. There's a lot of interesting interactions. I love the dialogue. I love the violence. Of kudos to the. I was trying to find I always forget the artist's name.
Otto Schmidt.
Otto Schmidt. Yeah, his art. I've just come to familiarize myself. His art here. I apologize for not remembering his name, but I really love it. I love witnessing the fate of Aquaman at the hands of Darkseid here. I think it's not, and it's because I know that the death is permanent, and I love Jeremy Adams' Aquaman, but this was an Aquaman. This was an iteration of Aquaman that I have no problem seeing reach an end. So I enjoyed this. This was just a lot of fun. It's almost as much fun as reading I think it was the end of the first issue of DCV Vampires, witnessing the fate of one of the Wonder Twins at the hands of Green Lantern in the blender. I had a lot of fun with this. Darkseid doesn't need a blender to make someone go splat. He just needs his big hands and his attitude, and he does that. Darkseid indeed is. And yeah, I had a lot of fun reading this issue. This has just it's been a guilty pleasure every issue, and this is really it's really no exception. And even the backup dealing with Animal Man was was okay. I've enjoyed the backups less than the main story, but the backups are a nice addition by giving us backstories of other iterations of mainstream DC heroes in the vampiric universe. So I thought it was entertaining as hell. What about yourself?
I thought it was okay. I didn't enjoy it as much as you. It felt a bit transitional, um, which is interesting because you're right. Like so much happens, especially with Darkseid showing up. Yeah, the supposed death of Scott Free and this prophesied baby. Um, Obviously, the death of Aquaman, the Wonder Woman, or sorry, the Supergirl battle. Yeah, it does have a lot of action, but again, at the same time, it really felt like, okay, how do I get from point A with where we are right now with this um, story of the humans and the vampires, this uneasy truce, and they're literally on the brink of war. How do I go from there to, okay, now Darkseid's here? Is it going to be humans and vampires teaming up to take on Darkseid? Is Darkseid going to pick a side? Like, I mean, he's a force of nature on his own. So how do I get from that story to whatever the end's going to be? And we don't know what that's going to be yet. Um, well, we're going to have an issue like this where things are just a little awkward. It just felt a little awkward. So, I mean, it's not bad by any stretch, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed previous issues of the series. And it does make me wonder. So, I mean, what's Darkseid's end goal here? Are we going to see? I mean, he's very much a cosmic character, right? Even though he's Darkseid and he's the big bad, or at least DC's tried to make him the big bad of their whole universe. But traditionally, he's more of a cosmic villain. And vampires seem so not cosmic. They're almost the exact opposite of cosmic, but if Darkseid has a chance to augment his armies with superpowered vampires, I would think he would take that chance. So are we going to see vampires in space, or cosmic vampires, but not in a way we've seen before? Yeah, I got a lot of questions. But the Otto Schmidt art is fantastic. It felt a little tighter this issue, and I wonder it's because he's not coloring himself. So if Perlugi is cleaning the line work up in the coloring process, or because Otto doesn't have to color it himself, maybe he has a little more time to be tighter with his pencils. I'm not sure, but I thought the art was exceptional in this particular issue. For the Animal Man backup, let me give the credits for that really quickly. I did already. It's a Joey Esposito written. Yeah. I thought it was kind of meh, to be honest. I can't remember there being a backup for any of these DC Vampires corner of the universe. I can't remember any of their backups being particularly memorable or really feeling like it has a purpose. And it's sort of the same thing here. I mean, I do feel for Buddy Baker. Obviously, his family has been infected, and he knows that, and he's trying to feed them animal blood to keep them from going out and killing and being murderers. Doesn't really work, and you can sense the despair he feels as a father. He wasn't able to protect his wife and daughter, but at the end of the day, am I going to remember this? Probably not. So it's just okay. It's just meh. I'd rather pay $1 less for the book and not have the backup. So, all right, moving on to our last book, and this isn't a case of saving the best for last. Although I don't know, maybe it is the best book of the week. We'll have to get to that. Because I'm sure some of you were like, "Oh, you mentioned you talked to Scott and Absolute Batman Year One." But yeah, we just go in the order that they're in the press preview folder. So anyway, Absolute Batman number 4. It is basically year 1 of the Absolute version of Batman. It's written by Scott Snyder. The plot is by Snyder along with Nick Dragotta. There's a guest artist in this issue, Gabriel Hernandez Walta. Colors by regular series colorist Frank Martin, and the letters are by Clayton Cowles. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, Rocky. How'd it go over for you?
Um, yeah, first I apologize. So I was watching on YouTube. It looks like I had screwed up my thumbnails. I didn't upload the one thumbnail for Absolute Batman, and I mixed. But in any event, this is essentially this is like the origin story of sort of like the formative years of what led to Absolute Batman. We have a young Bruce Wayne and the process and the years and what shaped a young Bruce Wayne to become uh, Absolute Batman. And I thought it was really well done. The art, uh, the art, it's a the artist is different, and for some reason, yeah, the artist Gabriel Hernandez Walta. It's not bad. I would have preferred that we had the same artist, Jakota, but it's all well and good. It's we get inside the head of Bruce Wayne. I think that this Scott Snyder does a good job here because one of the things that really works well is you see how you see how Batman, why did a young Bruce Wayne choose a bat? Well, this is much different. Scott Snyder, he he really gets into the history of, he applies, why did Bruce Wayne choose a bat? Well, it's explained, and it's not because a bat broke a window and scared him as a kid. And that causes him wanted to strike fear into villain. No, it's actually a young Bruce Wayne. He's brilliant. He's an architectural designer. He's brilliant. He literally builds. He he utilizes the idea of a bat to essentially how he even created the cape, and he wanted to do it. First, he wanted to do it. He was trying to figure out how to fight back, and he makes mistakes. And 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 as he's doing that, he's also having conversations. He's thinking back. We get flashbacks of his talking with his father, and and just the fact that he's young and he's brilliant, and we learn about Thomas Wayne and why Thomas Wayne in this iteration isn't a doctor. He's a teacher instead, and we hear about the path not taken, and in many ways the path not taken in Thomas Wayne was the path that was taken in the mainstream Batman universe. So it's very well done. You can see how the different choices we make, how it affects our lives and can have an impact moving forward. You could almost even say it's almost like an interesting sort of butterfly effect. One slight change, an occupational change by a parent, the impact it can have on a child. And uh, but I really appreciated the fact that this feels like a more. I actually like this Bruce Wayne. It's nice that it just feels different. It feels like a different kind of Bruce Wayne. His motivations are different. His hero's journey, his why he made the choices he did, it makes sense. And he's made different choices. He chooses to become bigger, more muscular for a very specific reason. It's because that's what his experiences are. There's a reason why he rejects the use of a gun. There's a reason why he even tried using vampire teeth. That bats have teeth. He even gave up using like vampiric teeth with aesthetics to to numb villains and to put them to sleep. I mean, he experimented with all kinds of things, and in many ways maybe looked a little bit foolish, but he he was experimenting, and it worked. And I like how he was working on a budget, and he had a little miniature Batmobile at one point to incapacitate an 18-wheeler, and just he's utilizing his mind. I got more of an appreciation for the brilliance of this Batman, which you would expect because he's only one person and he's not a billionaire, and you all that is shown here. The struggle that he has, and the fact that he's very much a loner, but the inspiration he also gets from his own father, and the genius that he has in particular building this bridge, and how he even utilized that same concept to create the cape, and even how the cape itself, it looks like a bat. In fact, just for what it's worth, I encourage people listening just to go off tangent for just a bit. I Google a bat. There's a YouTube video out there that shows a bat running, And when bats actually run, they use their wings. Bats can actually use their wings to run. I never saw that. Now, probably Scott Snyder did, but to actually see a real life bat use its wings to walk, that's actually what real life bats do. Now, me and my naivete, because what the hell, I've never had a pet bat. I've never seen a bat do that in real life. I thought that was just poetic license for the comic. No, bats actually do that. It looks pretty cool. Just their YouTube videos on. You should check it out. It looks really cool, and it looks like the artistically, that's what the Dakota and the artists in this comic have utilized. And anyways, it's just I actually had an appreciation for how much thought Snyder has put into this, as well as the artist and the rendition of Absolute Batman. Uh, I think this adds to the mythology. It adds to it in a way that again I'm just as I'm just equally impressed. And I just want to say one thing that I've got a more appreciate. I'm getting more and more of an appreciation of how wonderfully distinct Absolute Batman, Absolute Superman, and Absolute Wonder Woman is, because I think that looking at all of them, while they're all individual stories, I like that Absolute Batman is grounded in a humanity and in a Gotham and in Bruce Wayne's struggles. I love how at Absolute Superman we got more of the cosmology of the Absolute universe. It's grounded in Krypton and Earth, but we're also getting Omega Men. We're getting more of a cosmology of the Absolute universe. And in Absolute Wonder Woman, we're getting the mystical, the magical, and the mythological based. And we're covering so much ground on just 3 titles, and we haven't even gotten into Absolute Green Lantern, Absolute Martian Manhunter, Absolute Flash, etc., etc. Anyways, quick digression, but I'm really enjoying this. Scott Snyder's done a good job on this, and the guest artist was pretty good too. I enjoyed this. I'm curious as to your thoughts.
Yeah, I thought Gabriel Walta did a fantastic job. Scott talked about it when I spoke with him about how he laid things out. And I want to be clear that even though Dragotta doesn't handle any of the art in this particular issue, when you talk about things like the design and the look and whatever, he has input. I mean, there's a reason he's credited as plotter on the story. He's so much more than just the person that's drawing Absolute Batman. I mean, Absolute Batman, story points have come out of his design with the way he looks, like what Rocky's talking about with the wings and what have you. That factors so much into the story when we talk about the evolution of him as a character as he's going through this year one, and he is changing things, right? He does at first use fangs with a paralytic on it, and he's trying a certain thing and to look scary or whatever, and he realizes it's not working. And that parallels this project that Bruce has when he's a kid, this engineering project where he's having to build a bridge, and the bridge goes through various iterations. And then that all ties in with why they're at the zoo in the first place. He wins the engineering competition, and that's why him and his classmates are at the zoo that day when the mass shooting takes place, and the kids in his class are threatened, and his father ends up having to step in and basically lay down his life so that the kids survive. So it's all tied in together. But I love the parallel of the conversation, and Scott does a brilliant job of laying it out, and Walta does a brilliant job of illustrating it, but of switching back and forth between the past when he's having this conversation with his father and showing him the different iterations of the bridge, and how that mirrors how he sees himself as Batman and what he wants to become. And then you add in kind of the third thread here, which is how the issue begins and ends. And I didn't even necessarily pick up on this myself, but it was when I was talking to Scott. So again, I highly encourage everybody go over to the Comic Source YouTube channel and look for that spotlight with Scott and I, because he talks about really looking at that evolution. It starts off, we've got Bruce in court. Joe Chill is sitting there. Joe Chill's about to make a statement. Bruce asks to make a statement first. And he basically says, I effing hate you. I don't care about anything you have to say. He's basically saying even an apology from you is worthless. I'll take nothing from you. I don't care what you have to say. I just hate you. There's this anger that he has, as a young man, because his father was killed by Joe Chill. It feels like a righteous anger, but it's an anger that blocks out everything else. He can't do anything but just hate this guy and focus his anger, and uses that as part of the motivation to become Batman and to try to always be moving forward. We talk about Batman advance forward, Batman AF and what have you. But at the end of the story, he's willing to listen to Joe Chill. He still doesn't seem like he's going to give it any credence or offer any forgiveness or any empathy, but he's willing to listen because he's gone through this training. He's gone through these iterations of Batman. He's gone, he's thinking back to the conversation he had with his father, and rather than just beating the crap out of people because that's what they deserve, he's trying to build something better. And we see that at the end of the story when he goes to see Joe Chill in prison, and he's like, "You said you had something to say." He wants to listen to what Joe Chill has to say to see if there's any value to him using it. How can I take whatever Chill's about to tell me and use that information or context or emotionality or whatever it is that Joe Chill's going to say and how it's going to affect Bruce. How do I use that as fuel to become a better Batman? And that's, again, you can contrast that to a scene, later on, after he's tried various things. Let me try the paralytics. Let me try looking like a horror, movie monster, what have you. But then he goes and gets to the point where, as much as I want to just go and try to solve things with my fists, I know I have to be a better Batman. I have to do more. And we see him with the remote control car. We see him on the roof later when he's kind of observing this gala, and there's all these politicians and well-to-do people there, people of influence and what have you. And rather than just burst through the skylight and beat them all down, he's got mics hidden throughout the room. He's gathering information that's going to allow him, again, to be a better Batman, to go and stop, bad things from happening before they happen, or, expose people's corrupt operations or corrupt behavior and that sort of thing, because he knows there's more value in that long term than going in there with hate and anger and rage. So it's brilliantly done. I mean, to do an entire Batman Year One in one issue, that's an incredible feat. And I think the entire creative team did a really good job. That's not to say that they can't go back and do, like an absolute Batman Year One miniseries. I mean, that's perfectly valid. I mean, there's tons of stuff you could still go and explore, because we're just getting little snippets here and there. But if you want to know more about the kind of the behind the scenes motivations and why Scott chose to, team up with Dragotta and tell the story this way and what have you, again, go listen to that episode. There's a lot of value there. It's a short one. It's only like 15 minutes. I had a chance to ask like literally 3 questions. I mean, it doesn't help you ask Scott a question and he talks for 10 minutes, which is fantastic. It makes my job really easy. But yeah, it's a fantastic conversation, and it definitely gave me more context into who Absolute Batman is and how he's kind of relatable and what have you. And I'll just to tease one more thing about that conversation. One of the things that kind of struck me as I was, when I first read this issue a few weeks ago, the traumatic emotionality of it, and that anger that Batman has, and Scott's talked before about, kind of the main universe Batman is an extension of the system, and we're at a place now where people are questioning that system. They're questioning government more. They're questioning authority. Questioning what's true, what's not true, maybe more now than ever. And I got to thinking about how this Batman is a reflection of that, where we are in society now. And then you go back and look at various times where Batman has been sort of a reflection of where we are in society, right? You hear that term, the swinging 60s. Well, what was the Batman that we had there? The Adam West Batman,
Yeah.
crazy, fanciful, or whatever. Go back to Batman's earliest days where he did use a gun and he did kill people. And you were in the 30s, coming out of the Great Depression. There was much more of a sense of vengeance, if you will. There was still simmering anger over what had happened with the fat cats on Wall Street causing the stock market to crash and what have you. So it's such an interesting analysis that you can do of Batman as a character, how Batman as a character throughout, and there's tons more examples. I could talk about, Reagan in the 80s and capitalism and what have you, and big business and how that influenced the Batman of that era. You can go back and look at the Cataclysm in 2000s, right around that era, and see what's happening in the world then. And it's really, really interesting. So Scott and I discussed that in the episode as well. So again, go and check it out. if that's your jam. All right. Well, a couple of collections out this week. We've got Birds of Prey Volume 2, Worlds Without End. This is the Kelly Thompson version. Basically, the entire first 12 issues is one long story, first 13 issues, I guess, because this collects issues 7 through 13. So if you're a Birds of Prey fan or you've been enjoying that series, you can pick up that second volume. We also have DC's finest, Aquaman, the King of Atlantis. Well timed with Aquaman #1 on stands this week. That's just collects some seminal Aquaman stories through the years. We also have Stormwatch, The Road to Authority, Compendium. That's a giant tome that has a bunch of writers on it, mostly Warren Ellis, but it collects kind of the back half of that Stormwatch series, 37 through 50, and some annuals and what have you. It's 656 pages. If you want to get caught up on your Stormwatch reading, you can check that out. Batman Scooby-Doo Mysteries Volume 5 trade paperback, and finally Teen Titans Go on TV trade paperback is out this week as well. So those are the collected editions. Again, a bit of a smaller week for DC, even with collected editions this week. But there are those few that are out this week. Next week going to be huge. Probably need to start my reading already. So that being said, like we really enjoyed all 5 of these books this week for sure. It makes picking a favorite, a book of the week, much harder, Rocky. It's really between 2 for me, but I'll let you go. I'm gonna make you go first. What's your
Uh,
pick of the week?
yeah, my pick of the week, and this is a tough one. This is a tough one for me. I it's actually down between 3. I actually Absolute Batman #4. I liked, but I didn't find it. Well, no, it was excellent. It was good. But I just it didn't. It was just really good. The one that actually continues to impress me. Um, I mean, Aquaman, Jeremy Adams did a fantastic job. Batman Dark Patterns. It's between Batman Dark Patterns and Aquaman right now. Um, Hayden Sherman's art's fantastic. Dan Waters doing a fantastic job. But at the end of the day, I have to give it to Jeremy Adams for Aquaman because I like his no nonsense attitude by taking Aquaman back to his roots, and that's the bottom line. And I just all the power to him, and I'm an Aquaman fan again, and it's no nonsense, hit the ground running. He's the king of Atlantis, no messing around, and it just feels going back to the traditional Aquaman and kicking ass and taking names, and so I gotta go. I gotta go with Jeremy again.
It's really funny because when Fractured Spectrum was in this week, I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to choose between Fractured Spectrum and Aquaman. And then I read Absolute Batman, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't know which one I'm going to pick. And then Fractured Spectrum got moved, so I was like, okay, well, now it's easier. I only have to choose between 2, Aquaman and Absolute Batman. I honestly hadn't made up my mind and don't know which one I would pick. Like if I could only read one,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's such a hard choice. But since you picked Aquaman, you made it easier for me. I'm gonna pick Absolute Batman #4, so
Excellent
they both
choice.
get a shout out. Because yeah, I honestly don't know which one I enjoyed more, or which if I could have only read one of these. I mean, that's just such a tough choice. So thank God I can read them both, and I can reread them both. They're both very deserving of being picks of the week. They're both fantastic, narratively, visually. Yeah, great books. So, all right. Well, that does it for this episode, everybody. Again, apologies coming out a little late, circumstances beyond our control. But that being said, we want to thank you for joining us. As always, if you're listening to us on the audio only feed, be sure you head over to YouTube, do a search for Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom ! That's where these videos come out every week, the DC Spotlight. Like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave your comments below. Let us know what your book of the week is. All of that really helps foster a sense of community and helps us with our reach and get more eyes and get more access and that sort of thing. So we really appreciate that. If you are joining us on YouTube and you're curious about the audio only version, maybe you want to listen to it while you're working out or in the car or whatever, or you want to go back and listen to the whatever 2,500 previous episodes of the Comic Source, just go to your favorite podcast platform or app, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. The Comic Source has its own YouTube channel where all the rest of the content comes out. I mentioned interviews with Jeremy and Scott. So just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube and you'll find it. Have more interviews coming up with DC and other creators as well, Jason Aaron and JG Jones, and yeah, a lot of good stuff coming real soon. So be sure you head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel and subscribe. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.